Hard to believe that it's been over 2 years since SRAM came out with their AXS Eagle wireless group set. I think it's fair to say that AXS has very much remained an aspirational product. I mean, it was initially available only as an entire group set that cost almost $2,000. And despite making it available as a partial upgrade kit later on, $800 for an XR1 is a hard sell for most mountain bike enthusiasts because, frankly, a tried and true cable actuated shifter works pretty darn well for a lot less money. Even for those that could afford to spend that kind of cash, opted to wait because, well, this was a 1.0 product and the technology was bound to get better and cheaper. Well, 2 years later, we finally have the GX upgrade kit that many people have been waiting for, and at $600, it's a full $200 less than the XR1 wireless series. However, to put things in perspective, the GX AXS is still 3.5 times more expensive than its cable actuated counterpart. So today, we're going to answer the question everybody's been asking: is SRAM GX AXS finally worth it? For those that don't know, GX AXS is identical in functionality with its more expensive siblings, with the main difference being this lower cage assembly. As you'd expect, GX uses different materials, which not surprisingly adds a little bit of weight. But that aside, the main technology behind AXS, including the motors and the clutch and the controllers, are virtually identical, so not surprisingly, so is the shift quality. But that's not why you're here. You're wondering, how does this compare to standard mechanical shifting that you're probably running right now? And here's where it gets complicated. I'd go as far as to say, in most conditions, the shift quality is exactly the same as what you're used to, with some caveats, and let me explain. There's a lot more variables involved with your standard cable shifter setups. Things like the quality of the cable and the housing make a big difference, especially over time. Then there's the biggest variable, which is you. If you've been riding long enough, whether you know it or not, you've developed motor skills that allow you to shift smoothly. And if you need proof of this, give your bike to somebody who's never been on a mountain bike before. And if drivetrains could cry, yeah, that's exactly what it would sound like. For an experienced rider with a properly installed and maintained mechanical setup, in my opinion, the shift quality going into AXS will be largely the same, with one key difference, and that is consistency. AXS removes all of the variables we just talked about. No cables to wear out, no learning curve, just push the button. So the bottom line is, there's less for you to screw up. And speaking of those buttons, the controller interface is definitely something you need to get used to. The buttons are sensitive, maybe too sensitive, especially on really bumpy trails where accidental shifts could be a real thing. To use a car analogy, it's like going from a clunky stick shift to sequential paddle shifters, which is great for smooth Formula One race cars, but maybe not so much on bouncy Baja pickup trucks where things can get a bit chaotic. Now, this isn't a deal breaker by any means, and it doesn't take long for riders to adapt, but it's definitely worth mentioning. At this point in the video, you're probably wondering, if AXS isn't going to make my bike shift as if I'm a Jedi Knight, what the heck is it good for? In fact, the matter is, the bike industry in general is obsessed with shifting gears. I mean, do we really need 4 different Eagle drivetrains? We even classify bike models after them and make oil slick and copper colors as some strange form of mountain bike peacocking. Therefore, the value proposition of AXS isn't something you can quantify. In other words, AXS isn't something you need, it's something you want. And for the same reason nobody buys Ray-Bans just for UV protection. We buy it because we think it's f***ing cool. AXS has an undeniable cool factor, and I'm not just talking about those robot noises. For instance, the ability to pair your drivetrain to your computer and know which gear you're in at all times is pretty darn neat. Miss that dual release functionality from your Shimano setup? Pull out your smartphone, push a couple buttons, and you're done. Not a fan of the paddle shifter ergonomics? Swap it out for a more traditional rocker paddle. And finally, there's something oddly satisfying about taking out that shifter cable, knowing that you won't be putting it back in anytime soon. Electronic shifting opens the doors to all kinds of possibilities that we're just now starting to explore. So to answer the question, is GX AXS worth it? From a functionality perspective, absolutely not. Cable shifters these days are dialed, and the GX AXS doesn't move your chain from one gear to the other 3.5 times better. So that money is still better spent elsewhere on the bike, like your suspension or wheels. However, for those that find value in being in the forefront of mountain bike technology, $600 might just be enough to hit that buy now button or back order, especially if they're already considering a high-end mechanical group set anyway. The bottom line is, if you think AXS is cool and have the means, then I'd say it's definitely worth it. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to tune in next time where I try a couple of experiments with AXS and some other Shimano components. In the meantime, remember, those trails don't get easier, you get better. We'll see you on the next one.